Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture as we are back in the saddle once again for another season. And I have with me legendary comic creator and publisher Ben Dunn. So welcome back to the show.
Hello.
So welcome back. I'm excited to have you back.
Said I'd be back.
I don't know what's going on.
Technology, I love it.
Yeah. So obviously we're having technical issues, but I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're back and you got a lot going on.
Always never a dull moment.
So obviously I do want to talk about what's going on right now with you because you got Tomorrow Girl, The Early Years, Volume 3, which is on Kickstarter right now. You got a week left on that. And before we really dive into this issue and everything else that's going on with Antarctic Press, I am curious, and I figured we should catch everybody up on what is Tomorrow Girl for those hearing about it for the first time.
Well, excellent. Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so what is the basic premise of this for those that are hearing about it for the first time? Because there are people who come into comics at very different times and levels, and somebody might be walking right into this before we get into it, the whole thing. So what's the basic premise of Tomorrow Girl?
Well, Tomorrow Girl is, I grew up reading a lot of Silver, Bronze Age superheroes, and Tomorrow Girl is my homage to those comics that I grew reading. Bringing back sort of bringing back a superhero that was more attuned to what I grew up with, but configuring it.
Are you there?
She's she's sort of like my basically my she was actually introduced in Ninja High School as sort of like my superhero character, and then she originally was just sort of a background character. She didn't really much. She was more of a supporting cast until I did the Tomorrow Girl versus Common America book, and she suddenly took off. Everyone was suddenly exposed to her as a character, and I decided, you know what? After like 20 plus years, I think she deserves to have her own book.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because she was in Ninja High School and was sort of a background character, protector of Quagmire from Ninja High School, and then fast forward 20 years. What was that like when you decided to obviously team with Carmen America and then she took off? Because that doesn't happen with every character, and it's a very cool thing, I feel, when you get to take something that I guess is a background character and elevate it, and then people are receptive to it. And what has that been like? Because I would imagine that it's very rewarding for you in a lot of ways as a creator.
What did you ask? I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that.
As a creator, I would imagine it's very rewarding for you that the fact that this has been so receptive and people like her as a character, and 20 years later, obviously she's now getting the spotlight she deserves.
Well, I hope
Yeah.
so. It really I can entertain people to want to continue to support her as a character. I mean, it really comes down to creating an interesting character with interesting stories. That's really what it boils down to. I think that one of the things that I really want to bring back is sort of the basic superhero trope. I think I think for the past 20, 15, 20 years, there's been a lot of deconstruction of the basic superhero premise, trying to make them more realistic, trying to give them, I think, too many character flaws, and more emphasis on the private lives of the superhero instead of emphasizing story, and emphasizing the emphasize her a character, who she is. If people wanted to read a story about uh, somebody, with that many flaws, then they could just read a regular soap opera or something else like that. I mean, superheroes are a very unique genre. It's one of those things that is uniquely American. It's one of our things that just sort of like our own mythos, basically our own legends and things like that. And I would like to contribute to that pantheon. Just try to bring back, what makes this a hero a hero. Just focus on doing very interesting, self-contained stories, and build up character over a period of time. Expose little things, little quirks in her personality, and how she deals with people and having the abilities of a god, basically.
Yeah, you really brought up an interesting point there where I feel, and I think other people feel it too, is that superheroes have gone away from being superheroes now. And now, not to get too political and not to use certain terms, but it's almost become that it's a lecture in a lot of ways where, DC, Marvel in particular, I feel are lecturing their audience on a variety of things and not basically saying, hey, look, Superman is a god in a lot of ways and can basically destroy Earth in seconds if he wanted to, and he is also dealing with other godlike creatures and he's choosing to protect us. And what is that like? Because you kind of said it really perfectly, where we've gotten away from what I think is supposed to be an escape, and it's now become almost a lecture and, I guess, a pawn in ideology, for lack of a better word. And what is that like to say, hey, I kind of want to bring it back to
Well, I
people who
mean,
want to read this to escape, is how I feel, at least.
I mean, there's a way you can lecture, okay, but it doesn't. It has to be subtle. It has to be for a reason. There has to be, nuance to it. You want to be entertained, and the reason they plump down their hard-earned money to read a comic book is because they want to be entertained. They care about these characters. They want to see what predicament that they're going to get in the next. Um, and that's just been sort of the way things have been for a while, until recently, when I think a lot of the stuff I'm seeing in modern superheroes comics, where instead of writing about the character on its own unique way, I tend to see that uh, writers have a way of just inserting themselves into that character, and instead of trying to develop singular stories that will hold it and entertain a reader, they tend to sort of meander into sort of a soap opera to be continued type trope where I don't know. I don't remember the last comic I read where it didn't end on some sort of cliffhanger. I mean, it used to be back when I was reading comics, a lot of the stories, in fact, most of the stories were all self-contained. They had a beginning, they had a middle, and end. Yeah, there were subplots that were going on in there that would drive the story forward, but I think it's gotten a little. I think we need to go back to the basic storytelling, where we can actually tell a story within one issue, so that people can just say, come away with this feeling, that there's a conclusion. Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to aim for with tomorrow. I mean, you're following her adventures every day, but I'm trying to create her in such a way I mean, try to present her in such a way that you don't have to know, a whole little tiny pieces. Let the story drive, let the story drive the character.
Yeah, let's dive into that because I obviously am a lot newer to comics than other people. I have been on and off in graphic novels, but I came in when I was around 13, and then I was on and off and I was more into manga. And, I feel that part of the problem with comics is what you were saying, but also I don't know where to start anymore in comics with Marvel, DC, and even with certain things like Image and a variety of other things. I don't know where to start in that whole continuum. I don't know what stories go where. And I also feel that there's 14 different entry points and exits that they have with these events. And then it becomes massively expensive for me to figure out what's going on. And then I get turned off. And there is an art to having a, 24 pager where it's cool. You could jump in and I could jump out. And then if I skip 3 issues, I didn't miss much. And
Right.
what is that like to do that? Because I think it is a lost art on writing. I think it's a lost art on storytelling. I think it's a lost art on marketing and even building a business to cast a wide net. Because I hate to say this, but I feel like the industry has massively shrunk in the last 20, 30 years. And I'm 30, so I don't know. Obviously, I've been in comics maybe for 15 years as a fan, but I'm curious how you feel about that because that's how I'm viewing it. And I feel like you're trying to do the opposite of that.
Oh, well, I sort of disagree that it's massively shrunk. I think what's massively shrunk is the traditional well, not the, but the superheroes that Marvel and DC are offering. I mean, manga is exploding. People, but the manga industry itself has, uh, you know, grown in leaps and bounds, and even independent comics are starting to, you know, give Marvel and DC a run for their money. We're seeing a lot of independent creations, make millions of dollars, something unheard of, just 15 years ago. It is now possible for an independent comic to reach heights, that were only imagined, just not until just recently. So I think what it is that you have to know your audience. There's an audience out there for comics. I believe this wholeheartedly, but you have to give them something to read because they're not going to part with their hard-earned money and on something that they're not going to be entertained by. And there's a lot of competition too. I mean, comics, perhaps one of the easiest forms of entertainment to actually create. You're not limited by budget. I mean, well, you are sort of, but in a way you're not, because now you can post your comics online, and that doesn't cost anything to do that. The trick is to be able to monetize that. That's the tricky part. But I'll give you an example. Like, do you remember newspaper comic strips?
I barely. I remember like on the Sunday, you get the Sunday paper, and there was like Garfield and some other stuff in there that was good, but I
Uh,
don't remember it like massively.
Well, okay, this was the usual model that was employed for decades. Newspapers would run comic strips for free. You could read them free if you bought the newspaper. And people enjoyed them, and they were disposable entertainment. But where you made the money was you collected all those free comic strips, into books, and that's where you made the money. And this is sort of the way I look at the things that you put online. You put online, you let people sample your work, they can read it, they can enjoy it, and if they like it, they'll buy a physical copy of the book just so they can have, on their shelf, and they can read at any time. Yeah, and that's, I think that we're losing. I don't know, understand why some businesses seem to think that they should abandon an old model of doing business for a new model. When they could just keep both. There's no reason why one should be abandoned for another. To me, it makes no sense. What you're really doing is you're limiting your revenue stream. And then if why would you do that? It just doesn't make sense. You know, and you have to also give people a reason to want to read your book. If it doesn't succeed at first, the fact of the matter is, if you've done it, it may not be. It may take off, in which case that's fantastic. But if it doesn't, then you learn from that. And the one thing that you can accomplish is that once you've done something, it's yours forever. Okay, I mean, something you've done 5, 10, 20 years ago may be rediscovered, later on down the line. So the fact of the matter is, really, is that you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And as far as Marvel and DC are concerned, I mean, yeah, they're still the big two, but I think slowly over as time progresses, their importance uh, is diminishing, and they're becoming more like IPs for movies and TV shows as opposed for comics. And that's a perfect opportunity for entrepreneurial creators to come in and scoop up, readers that they have abandoned.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of stuff, and then I want to dive into this because you mentioned something, and definitely I agree that there's an entrepreneurial level somewhere in all of this for somebody to make a boatload of cash and build an audience and fill a niche and a whole bunch of stuff. There's money to be made across the board for
Right.
everyone
It
in
doesn't have to be a
comics.
singular person either. I mean, collectively, if you think about it, if you collectively, if you take all the independent creators into one, if you had put them under one umbrella, I mean, collectively, they would outmatch, you know, the the output of both Marvel and DC. I mean, right now, the biggest problem I see is distribution. Okay, I mean, uh, you can read comics online, okay, which is fine, but it's not the same as reading a comic that you're holding in your hands. People are they like to touch and feel things. We're visceral in nature, and the own of something physical is something that can never take away from you. That's the beauty of actual real physical comics and books. You can read things online. That's fine. You can be entertained, but in the
Yeah.
end, you'll never be able to own it. Okay, and you'll never be able to touch it and feel it. And there's something to be said about just looking through a book or a comic, turning the pages, feeling the paper, and reading it at your leisure. Yeah, and that's something I think will always be there. I don't care how digital we become. There will always, I believe, always will be a demand for physical copies of the comic. Now, the trick is, how do we get those comics into the hands of people who potentially want to read them? See, that's the problem. When Marvel and DC abandoned the newsstand model, uh, that was the perfect way for a lot of people to be exposed, to comics. And when they abandoned that for the direct market, I think they lost a potentially valuable revenue stream. And now even the direct market is starting to suffer because the direct market relies on comic stores, and if comic stores don't get product that's selling, then more of them go out of business, and thus it shrinks the direct market. Manga has taken a different approach. They're going through bookstores, and they're embracing both the bookstores and online. They're expanding every revenue stream that they could possibly think of, and that's how we should think. We should think that same way. We
So,
should,
so let's actually talk about that because I love anime. I mean, my logo is a cute little elf, and I'm a huge anime fan. I love Crunchyroll. There's a reason why they were bought for $1.2 billion. And I think Viz just launched something with digital manga that's pretty affordable. And I don't really understand why I feel, because when I speak to people in comics, I feel like they're so abrasive to anything that is like that and things like comicsology. And I understand that that's not necessarily a physical thing, but it also opens up a huge market. And when I speak to people in comics, they seem so abrasive to things that manga does and getting into, things that are distribution channels, both digital and physical. And I don't understand it. And again, I don't have a book. I haven't produced the book. I don't know if I ever will. I sell a lot of comics, and I like to go into a bunch of different revenue streams in areas where I could sell my book because I want to try everything and I want to be everywhere, whether that's Facebook, eBay. Eventually, I'm going to make it to whatnot. And I just don't understand. I mean, because you at Antarctic Press, I feel try a lot of different revenue streams to get into things, both your store, online, Kickstarters, distribution, and other channels. So I'm very confused about the whole comic market and why they seem so abrasive.
Well, change is scary. Okay, the thing is that uh, when the new model or paradigm comes along, you feel apprehensive to it because you don't understand it. But once you understand it, it can be something that you can take advantage of and embrace, then you can move forward. Then uh, you can evolve, basically. I mean, there's a lot of, but don't abandon the old. Okay, just uh, try to balance both new and old. I mean, I'm going to be controversial here, okay, and say, a lot of I see and hear a lot of resistance to AI, and unfortunately, or fortunately, either way you look at it, it's here, okay, and it's the fact of the matter is you can either reject it or embrace it. And I feel I shake my hand when people say, oh, I'm totally against AI. No, it's like, okay, AI is in the beginning stages. Okay, we are in there. This is something new, and it's only going to get better. Okay, you mentioned you wanted to do comics. Is that correct?
Eventually, I'll do something in this space. Eventually.
Well, eventually you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to plug in your story into an AI program and it'll spit out a comic for you. Okay, whether that's ethical or moral, I don't know. Okay, some people feel that you know it's not a good thing. You know, whether or not it's a good thing or not, okay, it's here. Okay, and it does allow people who can't draw to be able to create. And what's wrong with that? We want more people to be able to create.
This is interesting that you bring this up. So a little while ago, earlier this year, I did a discussion with somebody. We were speaking about it, and I put up a status that I said I'm very pro AI, and a bunch of people were kind of making fun of me a little bit and questioning why I said that. And the reason why I said it is for two reasons. A, it is here, as you were stating, and if artists feel threatened by that, you have to understand what AI is and you need to have a full embracing of it so that you can properly protect yourself. And I had a very hard time when I was trying to host a panel on it on my YouTube channel, finding people who wanted to talk about it. And my reaction to that was, and this is controversial, saying if we don't have a conversation about this in an adult fashion, then how can we properly know what it is, what it can't do, and how can you properly legally protect yourself if you don't know what it is and what it's going to present and do and potentially take from you or grant you. And that's what I don't understand about AI and the opposition to it is that I can understand somebody saying, I'm not a fan of it after having an hour, 2 hour, 6 hour conversation about it, but nobody wants to talk about it in comics that I've come
Well,
across. And
it's
that's an
it's
issue.
yeah, it's coming whether you like it or not. Okay, I mean, artists, I mean, for centuries have been stealing from each other. Okay, let's face it, they have. And comic book artists steal from other comic book artists. We never made a big deal about that. It was just a given. What's frightening is the ease and expediency of AI. Okay, and how uh, how professionally it is able to produce an image that is on par with a human artist. And to that I say, you know what? There are some things AI cannot do. Okay, AI does not create a style. Okay, artists create styles. Okay, I'm not sure. I don't know how far you remember, but when I was growing up, every comic book artist has its own distinct look. I mean, Jack Kirby was Jack Kirby. I could tell a Jack Kirby the minute I saw it. Okay, Wally Wood was Wally Wood. Jim Steranko was Jim Steranko. Barry Smith was. Every artist had his own style, and it was unique to that artist. You could tell simply by looking at it who the artist, who drew that. Now I look at modern comics and I have no idea who drew what. Okay, they all look exactly the same. It looks like it's been pumped out by some sort of machine, and uh, I mean the faces look the same, the poses look the same, the placement of the characters look the same. I mean, very few artists nowadays, I believe, have a distinct style, that you can look at immediately and say, "Oh, I know who drew that." Okay, and that's the one thing that AI can't do yet. Okay, is create a distinct style for itself. And we have to embrace. We have to be able to. If you want to compete with AI, then you create a style that people like that AI cannot reproduce. I mean, there's only so much a machine can do. Now, I'm not saying that maybe what 10, 5, 10, 15 years from now that they may get to that point, but it's a tool just like anything else. I remember when the first coloring program came out for the computer. When that first came out, people said, "Oh no, it's going to replace colorists." Oh no, it hasn't. And now almost everybody does it because it's it's easy, it's convenient, it's a and it's efficient. It's a time saver. Okay, and it also allows people who cannot draw an outlet to be able to see their stories envisioned, okay, by something that can put their words into pictures. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, some people say, "Oh, it's stealing." So, is it really? Is it really stealing? I mean, uh, yeah, it's going through some sort of algorithm where it's pulling out as many samples of other people's work and just sort of mishmashing it together in some sort of as best as it can do. Okay, but if you don't want the AI to steal your work, then don't post it. Okay, take down all the work that you want to do. This way, you're assured no AI will ever steal your artwork again. Okay, to me, I don't care. Okay, because the one thing I had of an advantage over AI is I can do my own stuff. I have no fear of it because uh, it's a tool like anything else, and I have the ability to draw whatever I want, anytime I want. That's the beauty of comics in of itself. Anybody with a pencil and paper and an imagination create whole worlds where you're not limited by any budget. You're only limited by what you can put on your paper. And I don't fear that as long as you can create and imagine. Why do you fear AI? Why do you fear it? I mean, some people say, "Oh, it's a lazy way of doing it," and yeah, well, okay, maybe it is, but don't we want to be more efficient? Don't we want to be able to spend less time on things that? I mean, yeah, if you want to spend the next 5 years writing the great American novel, then yeah, do it. Okay, you know, do it. That's no one's stopping you. You know, but like I said, AI is here. You cannot change that fact. Okay, short of a galactic EMP pulse that destroys all the technology, it's here. And so like I said, you can either embrace it or reject it. But you know, to me, the best thing to do is just to understand what it is, and take advantage of it.
No, I'm a big proponent of AI. I understand why people aren't. For me and this YouTube channel, I mean, I can legitimately take the transcript off of YouTube, put it into Chat GPT, and then have it write me a blog post of 2,000 words for legitimately about 9 cents.
Sure,
And that
you
that
can do
that's
that.
that's an unbelievable, cost efficient way for me to create potentially two or three or four blog posts in seconds.
Right. And
It
that's your
makes
choice.
sense.
And that
So
is your choice. You can do that. Okay. Because as human beings, we have that choice. Okay. You decide you want to do that. And that is totally up to you. Okay. No one should be able to tell you you can't do that. Okay. I mean, that's like saying, you know, hammer in that nail with your bare hands when there's a perfectly good hammer next to it. Okay. Which would be better for you? To pick up the hammer and nail in the hammer and the nail. I mean, it would be a lot easier than using your bare hands, right? So it's the same thing with this. If you don't have to use it, okay? Nobody's forcing you to use chat. See, this is what gets me, okay? Is that everyone complains, oh, chat GPT. Hey, no one's putting a gun to your head and saying you got to use chat GPT. No, okay? No one's putting a gun to you and saying you have to use AI to generate artwork. No, okay? People do it because it's there, okay? It's not, no one is forcing anybody to use any of those tools. The fact of the matter is that people are using them, okay? And we should not berate them for using it, okay? If they could create something wonderful and entertaining, and beautiful, why should we complain about that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. And that's it. I know it's a point of controversy, but I have to accept the fact that it is here.
it is controversial. And you know what is? I think, people just are challenged by what they don't know and what they feel could potentially take away their job versus embracing it and saying, how can I use this to make my job more efficient? Or how can I use it to make more money? Or how can I use it to produce a better product? And I think that's part of it too, is that people don't know enough about it to truly utilize it. And maybe it's that they look at this and, if you've been drawing for 15 years, maybe you don't know everything about it and it terrifies you. And you're like, man, am I going to be out of a job in 2, 3 years now because of this? And I think that that's part of it. I really do. Versus somebody like me, I embrace technology and I love technology and I want to know more about it. And maybe
Well,
that's my personality. I don't know.
I agree with you totally 100%. The fact of the matter is, AI is a tool. Okay, it does not spontaneously create. There's a human mind and a human hand behind every generated image thus far. Okay, until AI spontaneously creates something on its own, okay, every single image or written word is backed by a human mind, okay, by a human being. Okay, so uh, you know, I don't understand. It's not like robots are taking over and starting to. I mean, this whole thing of taking our jobs. Who's taking your jobs? What AI has taken any job? Okay, name one AI who's come along and destroyed the career of an established artist. Okay, I don't know a single one. Okay, what it has done is allow non-artists, such as yourself, okay, to be able to create something. Okay, that is where the magic lies. Okay, that's where you, the everyday person, who may have, he may go that route and then does not hire the artist. Like you may have thought about hiring an artist to do a story for you. Let's just say you wrote a comic book story, okay, and you have a choice of using AI or hiring a human artist, okay. Using an AI would definitely be cheaper and faster and more reliable, but there's something artificial about it. That's why it's called artificial intelligence. Okay, it's not. you know, it's not, it's not, you know, it's digital. Okay. And that's fine if you can come up with something satisfactory that people will be willing to pay money for, you know, and that's really what it comes down is about commerce. If you can convince what you've created, enough people to buy your work, using an AI artist. Well, I use the word artist loosely. AI, then why should I berate you for that? Okay, yeah, okay, maybe the artist didn't get hired by you, but then maybe the artist needs to rethink his position. Okay, he could decide, well, how can I use AI to better myself? So that I will be in demand. Okay, that I can create something that people will want to pay me for. And that's where the challenge lies. I mean, and in the end, that you have to be willing to accept that. I mean, when the automobile came along, I'm sure the people who made buggy whips were like saying, well, this newfangled car thing isn't going to last. So I mean, it you just got to you can adapt or die. I mean, just simple as that.
I agree, and I mean we can go on for hours about this topic alone, and it's so vast, and I love it. I mean, I love technology. I love things like this, and I love adapting. And I've been right on some things, I've been wrong on others, and but we don't have to go into to my wrongness here. But I do want to back out of this, and I want to talk about Tomorrow World more because
Okay, let's talk about it.
that's a much less controversial topic for all parties involved. And what I kind of want to dive a little bit into some of the inside baseball with it, where I know there's a few stories in Volume 3. I think Quagmire USA is in there. I think the Ninjas vs. Aliens storyline is in there, and there's a few others. And obviously, there's sort of one shot. You can come in, you don't need any background on it. But this is the third volume. And I know Volume 1 did really well. I think Volume 2 might have done better. And Volume 3 is over 10,000 now. And what is that like? Because, very few campaigns I feel on Kickstarter do 10,000. And it is an exclusive club. Not
What,
saying other campaigns aren't successful. If you do $5,000 on Kickstarter, that's great. But when you hit 10,000, it's sort of, I guess,
seems like the
serious.
magic number, doesn't it?
I don't know the right word here. You probably have a better word for me. It's a club. We'll go with that.
Well, I don't really like to look at it as a club. I want everyone to succeed. I want my dream is that people who create, who follow their dreams, be successful. I want that. And I think there's plenty of pie to go around, for that to happen. The thing is that we live in a very competitive industry. There's a lot being offered out there. I'm very happy and lucky that I have enough. I've satisfied enough backers to keep me going, and my hope is that I can grow that each time I do a new project. I'm hoping they'll be more happy with the next project I do, and that I can convince other people to come along for the ride. But in the end, I have to provide a product people want. And if they don't like what I'm producing, then I have to, step back and say, well, what am I doing wrong? You know, is it me? Okay. There's a famous meme, that The Simpsons did where uh, Principal Skinner was talking about thinking to himself whether what he was doing is wrong. And then he said, no, it must be the children. Okay. The worst thing you can do is blame somebody else for your problem. Okay. Especially if it's something that you should look inside to yourself. Now, as far as Tomorrow Girl is concerned, she's basically a manga version of Supergirl. Okay. I love Supergirl. She's one of my favorite characters. Okay, when I grew up with her, she was wholesome. She was Superman's ally. She wanted to help people. She was beautiful and powerful. I haven't kept up with Supergirl recently, but from my understand, she's a little different. She's more aggressive. She's a little bit more angry. You know, she's a little bit more, and that's fine. I mean, it's their IP, they know whatever. But I want to bring back, you know, a character that people can sympathize with, can follow along with, and say, yeah, I want to be just like her. I don't want to force my, uh, I don't want to force my views onto the reader. I want the reader to come along and with her. So I'm going back to sort of like, uh, traditional storytelling as far as comic books are concerned. I want every comic book of Tomorrow Girl to be self-contained. That it has a beginning, it has a middle, and has an end. And I built up her universe one brick at a time. I don't want to just explode all this stuff onto readers without any real explanation. They're just there. And I think the most successful way of building up a cohesive quote unquote universe is one book at a time. You have to be able to do it. I mean, do you think Marvel and DC, when they first started out, did they have an instant universe? No. Action number one had Superman, and that was it. Just Superman. Okay. And, you know, but Siegel and Schuster, they pumped out story after story after story. And every story they did built up on the last issue.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I think the word, and it's a good word, is equity. Where with Tomorrow Girl, and I've read, I have volume one and I've read that, you're building it and you're providing equity into your universe with her. And it also is spun off out of High School, which has equity. And I think that's something that sometimes creators forget is that because I feel like we live in an instant gratification world, or at least people want that and you have to, I feel, give me the character and issue after issue after issue to get to that stage. And what is that like? Because I feel like you've done that really well with a lot of things you've done. Ninja High School is a good example. Tomorrow Girl, obviously working at Antarctic Press forever, for lack of a better word, is that there's a lot of equity there. And I
Oh, I
think
appreciate that. I really do.
it's so important because it's authentic. And
Oh,
I'm saying this because there is a point right now, and at least I'm at that stage, and maybe it's just me, but I look for authenticity really does matter in what I buy, what I support, versus somebody just going for a cash grab, somebody going for, the money or thinking that, hey, this book is going to sell a lot. And unfortunately, in comics, that exists. And so, what is that like to, in my opinion, be that authentic position and be there?
well, I have a big advantage. Okay, is that I I own the characters I create, so I have investment into making sure that people are happy with it and they're satisfied with it. And I enjoy. I like writing stories that I would like to enjoy reading myself. The thing I see about corporate owned comics is that creators really have no investment in those characters because they don't own them. Okay, if they had agency and were able to benefit from the creation of characters, for the big two, then maybe we would start getting more and more interesting characters. And I mean, in the end, uh, all the stuff that you create for Marvel and DC, you don't own it. You never will. I mean, I don't know if that whether that will change or not. Maybe in the future, Marvel and DC may suddenly come to their senses and, say, hey, you know what? You created this character, then you should own it. I mean, that was the primary reason that Image was created. The character, the creators, the hot creators at that time were making all these big sales for Marvel and DC, and they weren't seeing anything. They got their page rate, and that was it. Okay, so I mean, you think to yourself, well, why am I giving them my best characters, the best years of my life, okay, only to end up penniless and owning nothing? And that's really what it comes down to. So that's why I think we're seeing a lot more interesting material coming out from the indie market, because every single one of those creators own their creation, you know, and they have the ability to uh, take advantage of that, and because they want us, and they want to see their creations become, you know, become popular. They want their creations to be able to reach a large audience. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and they want to be able to make enough off their creation that, that's all they have to do. I mean, it's difficult, but it can be done. I mean, every single creator in the existence of mankind had to start somewhere. Okay, I mean, George Lucas, he's my hero. Okay, yeah, he is a perfect example of somebody who started with nothing and created something, you know, that is was had a major impact on the world. Yeah, I mean, Eastman and Laird, they're my heroes too. Okay, they took independent comics out of, the back alleys, and out of the niche market, and made it mainstream. If it wasn't for them, Anarch Press would not exist, because they opened the floodgates for independent comics to be able to show that they were viable and that they could make money. And that's really what it comes down to.
So
As far
let's actually talk about that too, because on the other side of all of this, and it's a slight step outside of Tomorrow Girl, but Antarctic Press does publish a lot of indie people's comics. And I know certain comics are coming. I know that you've done work with John Crowther. I know that you pick up a bunch of books in Exciting Comics, Jungle Comics, and you test stuff. I think you're working with Tyler Carpenter. I don't know if I could say that, but I just did. I'm looking forward to hopefully. I think the Go with the Mega Fist is coming. I might be speaking out of turn, so anytime tell me to shut up if I took a step too far. But I enjoy that book a lot.
well,
Um,
good.
but it's a great book. It's a fun one. It's an American manga, and it's simple and it's easy, and it's just easy to digest. But what is that like? Because you're opening up the gates for certain people, and still the books have to carry themselves. The books have to, be good. Where it's not just getting into Exciting Comics or Manga Z or Jungle Comics. It helps, but your book still has to sell itself and connect with the reader. But you, as Antarctic Press, are at least helping to get some distribution into comic stores. Because I've been in Newberry, I've been in Midtown, I've been in my regular comic shop, and I've seen Excited Comics on the shelf. Not every week, not every time, but I do see it from time to time. And so, what is that like? Because that is super important. Where it's part of the answer. It's not the whole answer, but it's
Well,
part of
no, it's part of the greater whole. Okay, the fact of the matter is that creators that are people who send us stuff, we don't claim ownership on anything a creator does. Okay, you're basically allowing us to publish your work. Okay, you're giving us permission to publish your work. Okay, you take the time to send in a submission, and if we like it, we put it in one of our books, or we give you your own series. And that's one of the main reasons I created all the anthology titles that we have now. I mean, if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, AP wasn't doing a single anthology book, not one single one. Okay, now we have six. And I firmly believed in the anthology format because it allows publishers like ourselves to take a chance on creators that haven't, quite been proven yet, without risking uh, an entire series on its own. This was something that publishers did way back in the day. They went I don't know, a lot of people don't remember this, but in the golden age, almost every single comic book was an anthology. Okay, it had more than one story. It had several stories. A lot of new characters debuted in those stories, and that's why if you look at the golden age, they had very generic titles like, action comics, detective comics, exciting comics, and if the character proved to be popular, then they would get their own title. Okay. Superman proved to be really popular in action comics, so we got Superman. Batman proved to be very popular in detective, we got Batman. So this is our way of, testing the waters on characters that, without, you putting us in a financial bind with the risk of doing it their own series. So, but it's really up to the creator to decide what he wants to do from there. Okay, a lot of times I'll get submissions and I say, "Oh my gosh, this is a great submission," but I wish this creator would do more. Okay, and sometimes they don't either have the ability to do it, or they stop doing it, or they simply cannot keep up with a regular schedule. They can only do it maybe once a year, twice a year, or whatever. I think, to me, a successful publisher has to put out a book every month. Has to. If you want to be a successful publisher, you have to put out something every single month, if possible, every single week. And because if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And you have to make people become familiar with your creation over time until you get to the point where it's almost a habit. That they expect it. That they so that's why it's so important. That any creator who wants to make it with something, they have to put out something on a regular basis. They just have to. Because if you could do something, it's fantastic. That's why when I did. Uh, that's why when I brought back Ninja High School, it started off really slow, but now it's starting to build up momentum. Because Ninja High School had been out of comic stores for like 4 or 5 years. I didn't do anything for 4 or 5 years with Ninja High School, and then I decided, what, I'm bringing it back. And if I'm going to bring it back, I'm going to bring it back in a big way. So at first it started off slow, but then slowly over time, I started catching up, meeting my deadlines, putting out more books, and I'm hope that I can get Ninja High School back on a monthly schedule again, like I used to do back in the day, and Tomorrow Girl is part of that overall universe. So I've decided to take her and do my own superhero universe using Tomorrow Girl as the launching point. And then that led to the Superverse, which led to hopefully to a greater expansion of an independent superhero universe. But it takes time. I know it takes time, and it takes creators, and it takes a lot of people who are willing to see the vision that I have in order to make it come to fruition. And but the thing is that I have to set the example. I have to be able to show that I myself can put out a regular Tomorrow Girl book. And in order to do that, I have to start putting out stories, and hopefully they'll be good enough that I can sustain a regular series.
See, this is interesting because I think a lot of people in comics are good creators, but I don't know if they're good publishers. Because I think you really hit on a really interesting point where a publisher has to publish something monthly. And obviously, I mean, you took it even a step further, and I'm being very generous. You said weekly. And I think it's so interesting because this is one of my big criticisms in comics right now is I feel a lot of people talk about creativity, but they don't talk about the business of comics. They don't talk about publishing. They don't talk about setting the parameters, which you just outlined a bunch of stuff that's actually super important. And I think it's a real problem because comics, to me, if you're making a comic, it's not just making a comic. You're booking the art. You're, marketing it. You're going to the cons. You're selling it. You're getting distribution for it. And I think it's
Right.
a lot more than what people realize it is, but nobody talks about that
Well,
in.
absolutely. You are absolutely right. I mean, a lot of people understand that comics is a business. Okay. Um, People think it's very easy to do a comic book, and
It's hard.
it,
It's hard,
it
guys.
is. It is easy to do a comic. It's hard to sustain it. Okay, it's hard to make it profitable. In the end, I used to have this saying back at AP, was that back in the day, I said, if as long as we make 1 penny profit, it's still a profit. Okay, you need to worry is when you lose money. Okay, that is when you know you have to see what you're doing wrong. Okay, the fact of the matter is that, okay, if you want to be a business, then be a business. Now there's a lot of creators who can do that. Brian Polito's a perfect example of that. There's a lot of other publishers, I mean, a lot of other creators who can run their own business very successfully. Okay, I'm lucky enough to have a good set of people who run the day-to-day operation. Who do the books, who take care of the taxes, who pay the creators, who make sure that the books are printed, to make sure the printers are paid, to make sure that the shippers are paid, to keep track of. I mean, there's a lot of elements into going into publishing a comic book. It's not simply just draw, print, and ship. I mean, it can be. I mean, a lot of stuff, a lot of creators on Kickstarter do that. They do that very exact same thing. They create, they offer the book, they get backers, they print it, and then they ship it to their backers. Okay, you know that's not really publishing. That's more like printing your own book, and you're in charge of it. Publishing is a totally different thing because we are dealing. Publishing deals with a lot of creators, you know, and juggling a lot of books in order to maximize as much exposure for those creators as we possibly can. With Kickstarter, it's usually just one book or one project, and it's usually just one singular vision of that project, and hopefully it will be successful so that you can do your next project, and then you just build up upon there, and uh, so that's a big change. Back I've been using a lot of examples. We've been in business for almost 40 years. And we've seen a lot of change in the comic industry. Some of it good, some of it bad. But we've seen a lot of change, and the biggest change we've seen is crowdfunding. You know, Before, publishers were the gatekeepers. If you wanted to get your comic book in stores, you had to either publish it yourself and then go through a distributor to get into comic stores. That was the only way to do it, other than direct market. You know, I mean direct to consumer. And unfortunately, you didn't know how many books you were going to sell if you did that. You had to sort of guess. Back if you wanted to go direct to consumer, you had to go to a printer and say, "Well, we print a minimum of 3,000 copies." Okay, a printer can tell you that. A lot of them do. They have a minimum. So you do the minimum. You print 3,000 copies, so you're already out of pocket of 3,000 copies you have to print, plus producing the book. And then you offer it for sale direct to consumer, and you hope you sell enough copies to cover the cost of all the expenses that you accrued. With a publisher, you don't worry about that. The publisher takes all the risk. On the financial aspect. You create it, you take the risk of creating it, but the publisher takes the risk, financially, of putting your book out. And if your book doesn't sell, okay, yeah, you get hit because you don't, unless you do a page rate, okay, in which case you got paid. Okay, but the publisher, if your book doesn't sell, then he's out. He's out the page rate, he's out the shipping, he's out the printing. A lot of people you know, don't understand that. Okay, they figure the publishers, they have an endless supply of money. No, they don't. You know, and if your book doesn't uh, sell, then the publisher is out the money. That's why at the very beginning of AP, specifically at AP Project, we don't pay page rates. We do not pay page rates because we we decided that that is the death knell of small publisher is to pay a page rate. Okay, you know, unless it's an actual AP project. Like if I were to say, uh, you know, if I wanted to hire an artist to draw a Tomorrow Girl story, I would pay him a page rate. You know, because that's my project, and it's only fair if I'm going to hire somebody to draw it, I should have a page rate. But if it's your project, okay, and you're asking us to publish it, you know, we can't pay you a page rate because we don't know how the book's going to sell. So if my feeling is that if the book sells really good, you're going to get a good chunk of money. You know, the royalty. We set up a royalty system that if your book sells really well, you're going to do well. But if your book sells poorly, then not so much. You know, so like I said, one of the main reasons we've existed so long is because of that. You know, and you know, and that's something that's a model will not likely change in the near future. You know what I mean?
And also, just to clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, you don't own that person's project. And so,
Absolutely not. And in fact, you know, we don't lay any claim to it. Okay. And in fact, we actually encourage them, you know, to make as much money as humanly possible on that project. We do not we are not exclusive. Okay. That's the one thing I have to emphasize that if you want to do a Kickstarter project, I mean, for instance, Mary Machine Gun is a project we're doing, uh, and we're doing a comic book miniseries of it. But he's still doing his Kickstarter, and we don't, you know, we don't interfere with that. You know, in fact, we encourage it. You know, we want the creator to make as much money as humanly possible on his creation. We're just another revenue stream. You know, that's a better way of putting it. Okay, Anarchic Press is to the creator another revenue stream. Okay, you've done the work. You've already printed the book. You know, you've already fulfilled the campaign. You know, this is just another revenue stream. You send us the work you've already done. You know, we put it in our in one of our anthologies, or we give you a series, and the money you make off that is just it's extra. You know, for something that you've already done.
no, I just wanted to make that crystal clear because people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, cool, bam. And I
Yeah,
think it's important that people understand in comics how to make money. And obviously,
right.
I play the other side of this. I run an eBay store and I buy and sell books, and that's a whole different ball game too. But there are millions of ways how to make money in comics, and I think creators just need to figure out how to get creative. And maybe they
Yeah,
should chat GPT to figure that one out.
exactly.
But joking aside, obviously you got a lot of stuff coming. You were touching upon it, Mary Machine Gun. I know is coming. I think you got something with Tyler coming, and a few things. I know John Crowther, who does a bunch of stuff down in Florida, is always doing something with you guys. I think Tom Hutchinson might be doing something with you guys soon.
Yeah.
Um, which should be exciting. It should be exciting. It should be something very superhero-esque. Is a good way to put
Well,
it.
I mean, you know,
I don't know what I could say, Ben. That's the problem.
well, the thing is that we rely a lot on uh, submissions from other creators. I mean, that's really the lifeline of Anarch Press, but we're not totally reliant on them. See, that's the thing. We're very flexible in terms of being able just to do our own stuff. I mean, it's to a lot of publishers, it's either or. Okay, either the publisher owns everything, or the publisher owns nothing. Okay, and that's to me a recipe for failure. You know, I mean, not necessarily failure, but eventual decline. Okay, and if Marvel and DC really want to make something, they should be able to, you know, give the creator some stake in his creation. Okay, and that's I think they're going to have to do that eventually. I think, and as far as small publishers are concerned, okay, if all you publish are other people's creation and you don't take any ownership of anything, then what are you left with? You're an empty shell. Okay, that's why it's important for small publishers to create things that it also can own on its own, on itself. See, I am very fortunate, okay, that I can write, draw, and create my own stuff, and I do. But everything I create, I give to AP. So AP owns that, but I am AP. So we have a symbiotic relationship. If AP needs something done, okay, let's say we have a book and we need art for it, and I have the advantage of being able to create that art. I mean, now with AI, you can do it, you know, if we needed something in a pinch, and so that like I said, it's changed, but like I said, it's a balance. You have to have balance.
No, I think it's interesting, and obviously you got a lot going on. I mean, Gold Digger. I think is it Gold Digger?
Yes, I mean that's a perfect example. It's a good segue, in fact. Uh, Fred Perry is the creator of Gold Digger. Okay, when he first came to us, all right, he uh, this was back in like 1988. Okay, Fred Perry was an unknown. He hadn't done Gold Digger. He kept submitting stuff to us. He loved Ninja High School. He read the book, and he kept submitting stories to us. And at first, we didn't like his stuff. His stuff looked, very uh, amateurish. Okay, but he kept at it. He kept submitting. He kept submitting. He would not give up. And we were that impressed us more than anything else was the fact he just did not give up. He just kept submitting and submitting, submitting. To finally, he gave us a story we liked, and we printed it. Okay, and then after that, he proposed this Gold Digger series to us, and we printed that. It first appeared in magazine, which was an anthology title. And he proved to be reliable. His work had increased tremendously. Had improved tenfold. And he proved to be a very good guy to work with. He wasn't a prima donna. He knew that the work spoke for itself. He wasn't difficult, uh, and it was always on punctual. So those are all the ingredients we want in a creator. Uh, and at the same time, we treated him with respect. We always paid him on time. We and we got to know him, as a person. And he's been with us for almost the last 30 years. He's been with Antarctic Press. Now he's practically our family. So I mean, it just goes to show that depending on your demeanor and how you want to do things, it is possible for a creator to stay at one publisher for decades. Yeah, and that's what we want to do. We like to foster. We at AP like to foster. We don't want to discourage creators, but we also understand that this is a business, and a lot is up to you. You chart your own. You chart your own course. All we do is help you navigate. You know, and so it's really that's really what it comes down to.
No, I think it's interesting, and also, I mean, Gold Digger's just killing it. I mean, I know it just did really well on Kickstarter, and it's doing great, and I think it's still active, right?
Yes, but it's all Fred. Okay, a lot of people don't realize this, but he has written and drawn and colored every single issue of Gold Digger from the very first issue to the most current issue. Nobody else has ever touched a page of Gold Digger other than Fred Perry. Okay, I mean, very few artists can claim that. And we are so proud of him for that achievement, and I think he's I think he's deserving of higher praise than he's been. Uh, and hopefully he'll get that recognition he deserves.
And then obviously, I mean, I could talk to you for the next 10 hours with ease. But I do want to talk about rewards very quickly
Sure.
with Tomorrow Girl, and I got pictures. It's just my favorite part of the presentation. Um, But this one, which I think this is the soft cover, right?
Yes, that's the soft cover.
So I know there's like a few versions of this or a few options where you can just get the book in, obviously you get it digital, but then you get the soft cover, you could get it signed, and you can get it with a sketch. And
Right.
then there's this one, which is the hardcover, which
No,
is
that's the PDF.
well, that's the PDF. So I actually don't know what the hardcover is. Um,
The hardcover is the same as the soft, except in hardcover form.
Perfect. So I do have all the right images. Thank God. So
Yeah,
that's
I
this is the
decided to
PDF.
do an experiment and do an exclusive PDF cover.
That's interesting. That's interesting. But the hardcover, it also has a few options where you can just get the hardcover, you can get it signed, or you can get a sketch in there. And so, and then I think I think that's it. Like it's pretty simple. There's like 6 or 7 rewards, right?
Yeah, I tend to, since I do everything myself, and I've done campaigns with lots of rewards, and it's a nightmare. There's a lot of time spent on trying to organize and get them out and things like that. So I've tried to streamline it, make it simple, make it uh, uh, you know uh, make it direct, so that anybody who wants to back it, you know has some choices, but is not overwhelmed. you
Yeah,
know
because I don't know how you feel about this, but I hate Kickstarters that have like 50 choices. It gets confusing. I feel like it takes away from the experience. I feel, and this is just me, that 12 to 15 is really perfect because it's enough choices for me, but it's not overbearing. When somebody has 25, 30 rewards, it gets a little overbearing and I get confused, and I don't want to be confused when I want to support your book.
Well, I mean, it's just different strokes for different folks. I always say that if you want to manage 50 variant covers and 300 reward levels, and you can manage that and keep all your backers happy, more power to you. I have no objections to that whatsoever. But for
Well,
me
I
personally,
do. So you cannot object. I will object on both of our behalfs.
well,
I
well,
promise.
some people like that. I'm not one of them though. So, for me, time is to me, it's simplicity. I think has its own reward. I try to keep things simple, try to keep things direct. I want to get things out quickly. This way I can move on to the next project. And just keep momentum going. And this works for me because then people get used to it. Say, oh, he's going to do a sketch one, he's going to do a sign one, he's going to do a soft cover, he's going to do a hard cover. I mean, I become predictable, and that's really what I want. I want predictability. I want people to think that, that any campaign they do, they're going to probably get the standard rewards and not be too overly well. I mean, yes, I may in the future may do a variant cover or two, but I won't. I mean, like I did with Tomorrow Girl, I'd offer two variant covers. So I try to keep it, as direct and as simple as possible, and that's works for me. Okay, now, like I said, it works for my backers. So I always say that you know your own strength and you know your own weaknesses. And that I think that if uh, a lot of first time campaigners sometimes make the mistake of not, thinking about certain things like how much is shipping, how much is printing. You know, if I offer all these different rewards, those all cost money. Those all. Do I have the numbers? Do I have the information I need to be able to fulfill those rewards, and will I be able to do that? If it comes down to it. So you have to really plan carefully, I think. And I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of first time campaigners do is they don't plan carefully. And you have to plan.
I agree. I agree. Believe me, I learned that lesson where I planned a little bit on my campaign, but I was not ready.
Well, I always say look at all the successful campaigns that you can, see why they're successful. But I also look at all the campaigns that didn't make it and see why they didn't make it. So it's good to look at both sides of the coin, so that you don't fall into the same trap. And if you know anyone who has had a successful Kickstarter, try to get as much information as you can out of them, because they've already been down that road, and if they can help you avoid making mistakes, then you should definitely take it.
I agree. I mean, look, I didn't get myself into too much trouble, but at the
Hey,
same
Andrew,
time,
I have to. My wife is signaling. I have to go ahead and go, so I'll have to go ahead and cut this right now.
well, I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Well, I mean, if you haven't checked it out already, Tomorrow Girl Volume 3, The Early Years, is on Kickstarter for one more week. So check it out, and I think you might enjoy it.
Well, I couldn't have said that any better myself. Obviously, you should go support it. And just briefly, I am Pop Anime Comics on social media. Go follow me there. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word before I let you get out of here.
Yes, I would say if you're a creator, don't let things bottled up in your head. If you're a potential creator and you have a great idea, put it on paper, get it out there, share it with the world, because you may have the greatest idea in the world, but it does you no good if it's locked up in your head.
And that is perfect, and everybody. And that is a wrap.